secure. Automation and orchestration, endpoint detection and response, network visibility, cloud, containers, DevSecOps, threat intelligence, security platforms. Wondering how to keep up with all the latest security products and trends while still keeping your organization safe? Then stick around to listen to Ready, Set, Secure, the SET Solutions Podcast.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 45 of Ready, Set, Secure, SET Solutions Podcast. My name is Michael Farnum. If you watch at all, hopefully you know that I'm Michael Farnum and that this is Greg Porterfield. How you doing, Greg?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. It's been a little while since we've been on. Sorry for just a lot of work, a lot of vacation. Yeah, been kind of crazy around here. So we finally kicked this back in. And our first guest, as we kick all this stuff back in, hopefully keep a regular cadence, is Frank Balonis, CISO over at Kiteworks. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing great.
Appreciate you joining us. Good to have one of our partners on here, as always, to come on and talk about what they're doing, the latest stuff. So we're going to dig in that a little bit. You want to kind of give a quick intro of yourself and some of your background?
Certainly. So I've been working at Kiteworks for actually 19 years just last week.
Wow.
Started out as in the support area with our very first customer that we brought on board, and the platform evolved over the 15 years before we retired it just a few years ago, and brought the new Kiteworks platform to market about 8 years ago, in which I've now head up all of our hosting operations, security as the CISO, and still keep the support team in line and working with our customers and our partners.
Awesome. Can you give just a quick rundown of what Kiteworks does?
Sure. Kiteworks provides a platform, interestingly enough, called Kiteworks, which is a platform for privacy content network. It consolidates and allows secure communication in and out of an organization, providing a way of keeping a secure channel of all communications in and out, whether it's email, just automated transfers, or anything of the like.
Awesome. So protecting that data as you move it around.
Yep. Securing it at rest with encryption and in transit, of course.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you for that. Just want to make sure everybody, I know Kiteworks is well known out there, but just want to make sure everybody had good context. So as usual, we will run into the SET Solutions segment real fast and talk about some of the stuff we're doing. And then we'll get into the news, and then we'll get into the main segment with Frank. So let's start on that SET Solutions side real quick. So we all know, hopefully, Black Hat DEF CON's coming very soon, here in just a couple of weeks. So we will be out there. We've got a couple of dinners at Black Hat that we're hosting. So if you want to be a part of that, please reach out to your SET Solutions account manager. Let them know. Should be some good food out there, and we'll be palling around. We also have a suite out there that we'll be visiting some of our customers and some of our vendors. And then we'll also be at DEF CON. I think you're going to be out at DEF CON.
I'll be at both.
You'll be at both. So Greg will be at both as well. So that's really good. I think I'm going to hightail it out of there before DEF CON this year. I did Sunday to Monday last time, and or Monday to Sunday, and I was
It's a long run.
Yeah, it's a long run. So I said I wasn't going to do that anymore. I kind of want to see my wife and kids. But we'll be out there. So please let us know if you're going to be out, and I would love to meet up with some folks. And then in Houston and Dallas, we've also got some executive wine dinners coming. If you want to know about those, I think those are in August, September, October timeframe. I can't remember. That's a really wide variance, but let us know about that. Also, talk to your account manager, and we can get any of our security executive customers that have security executives there. If you want to meet up with those are always fun. Have a good time at those wine dinners. So that's kind of the updates here. And now let's jump into the news. So we've got two articles. First is one I'll be talking about, which is around the American Data Privacy and Protection Act. And then Greg is going to be talking about yet another Atlassian Confluence vulnerability. Those poor guys have been taking it on the chin here lately in various ways. So we'll be talking about that. So I will dig in real fast to my article. And Frank, as always, just feel free to jump in and talk about it after we cover it. And let's do the roundtable here. So my article is, you may or may not want to read up on the American Data Privacy and Protection Act using this article. It has a lot of kind of politics in it a little bit, but it was just the quickest one I could find because I knew that this was coming. Essentially, we're trying to be like a lot of other countries around the world and have our own kind of privacy and data privacy and protection act, which, Frank, something about that. And that is, for the first time ever, I believe, has made it to the, what did they say, to the floor of, here it is. Vote to advance marks the first time a comprehensive privacy bill will be made available for a full chamber vote in either the House or the Senate. So a comprehensive full data privacy and protection type act has never made it to a full vote in either one of the chambers of Congress in the United States, which is interesting. It also probably goes to some of our structure, how the United States is built with a bunch of states, and a lot of the states do their own thing. What I thought was interesting there too is that California is thrown a little bit of a fit because they've probably got one of the most comprehensive, if not the most comprehensive of any of the bills any of the states in the United States. And the fact that they're the fifth largest economy in the whole world gives them a little bit of pull as well. A lot of data flowing around in that state. So they're throwing a little bit of a fit, and it may hold some stuff up because basically what this is supposed to do is kind of take away in part of the bill some of the states' rights to be able to do their own type of stuff, even if the federal bill is a little weaker than the state bill. But, without getting into the politics, that's kind of what's holding it up, basically. But I do think that this puts us, regardless of how you think about it from a federal level or a state level, this puts us on par, if we can get this passed, with a lot of other countries around the world that have something like this. We want to have maybe won't have a patchwork of all of these different regulations. I was talking to some executives last week about that, and they're all over-regulated, and it drives them crazy. So maybe something like this can simplify it. I don't know. I don't get your...
I thought the California part was the part that stood out the most in their standing, and their protections are pretty strong. It enforces a lot of rules and things like this that are important. The idea that because their laws are stronger, not being able to overlay them on top of a federal framework is kind of a valid thought to me. Of there should be a baseline. There should be something that nationally we have this set of rules. If the states, California, Texas, Florida, New York, the bigger ones, wanted to go above and beyond and impose others, I get both sides of the argument. Doing business in different states is already challenging. Having to abide by different privacy regulations or concerns based off where your customers are, where you're based. Like if it works anything like the way taxes do, it's going to be a challenge to enforce and abide by.
That's a great point.
So I'm curious to see how this evolves and what it's going to look like as it gets closer. We got to get it through one chamber, then get it through the other, and then get it through signed. As we get to start see what it's going to look like after negotiation, I think it'll be worth scrutinizing.
Well, Frank, you deal with data, man. Tell us what you think.
So from my point of view, on one hand, it's good to see that this has finally made it to this level, as you mentioned earlier, but it also just highlights how far behind we are from other places like California, the rest of Europe, in addressing these privacy concerns for our citizens. With California, I agree with with what you're saying, in the fact that not only do they have a very comprehensive one, their Privacy Act itself was passed in 2018, and the constituents actually voted to increase its in 2020 with the Rights Act, in basically enforcing even more rights. And you can't really turn away from those things when you're building a federal program. And I feel they're going to have to address that before it makes it all the way through signing.
Yeah.
How we handle things, it's going to become more complicated for sure. You have to deal with GDPR. I mean, as we'll talk about later, every company around the world in some way ends up having to deal with it just about. And as a vendor working across and any company that has to do business or is based out of Europe makes it even more at risk. So having a guideline that we can follow is going to help in the global landscape.
Yep. Well, we'll keep following it. Definitely going to be interesting to watch it. United States is a interesting place to put some of this. You can do some comparison, though, to your point. There's other countries around the world. There's a ton of countries over in Europe, and they all have something different, even though I think the EU has maybe some overarching stuff as well. But those other ones, the way they approach it is the EU's here as a baseline, and then they move up. If we approach it in that same way, it'll be interesting. But all right, well, that's it for that article. Greg, why don't you tell us about what's going on at Confluence these days?
So Atlassian's kind of going through a rough period. This article comes out of dark reading, but it came across Twitter, and it's pretty well publicized at this point. There was a series of vulnerabilities. The one that is the most prevalent right now, it relates to a app that is within Confluence called Questions for Confluence. And the kind of key to the whole problem is that app, when it's installed, it creates a regular user account within the Confluence. This is not a cloud app. This is specific to local installations or enterprise installations. But it creates this account with kind of generic permissions and then stamps a kind of static password into it. And the password was complicated and long, but it was still a static password, which means as soon as someone figured out what it was, it's pretty much an open door to any login. It's kind of similar to a Windows application where you have service accounts that allows interactive login. Service accounts are fine, change the passwords and all of these things, but that service account shouldn't be logging into computers. And that was kind of the weakness here. It's unfortunate. Atlassian has had a rough couple of months. I'm sure they have released patches. They will continue staying on top of things. My take on it more than anything was knowing what your landscape and what your attack surface looks like, knowing your inventory. So do you know what apps and add-ons are inside Confluence or your other products? And are you able to digest or get the information about what's going on? This broke on Twitter and became a big deal. Paying attention and being able to understand if something is big and it affects me is going to continue to be something that we have to pay attention to.
Frank, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, they have had a rough patch. I mean, with the article itself, highlighting the hard-coded password, there's actually 2 other vulnerabilities mentioned in there. All 3 of them, have patches already available, but it affects the one we're talking about here affects Confluence, as you mentioned, but the other 2 affect almost all of their products, all of their on-premise. And this comes just 5 weeks after their very critical bug that they announced in June. As a software vendor, I know that, you have issues. You can introduce bugs, you can introduce vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, of this severity is difficult. But, the best practice of the hard-coded password, that's a tough one to swallow at this age. That is tied into that. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of other games in town for the functionality they're providing with the Confluence and Jira. So you just have to patch it as quickly as possible. Keep on top of these things with all of your software providers.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Or moved to the cloud, which I think was not affected or got patched earlier. Some of these things got patched earlier. The other thing that kind of struck me is that just getting rid, like uninstalling the questions app, doesn't get rid of the vulnerability because the user account stays there. So if you think we don't use questions anymore, I'm just going to install it and fix this. No, the account's still there. So either patch or install it and kill that user account. So, and then of course the other vulnerabilities obviously need to get fixed. So, well, that does it for the news segment. We will move into the main segment. So as we introduced Frank earlier, he works over at Kiteworks. Kiteworks did put a report out not too long ago Frank, why don't you tell us what it's down there at the bottom. So the Sensitive Content Communications Privacy and Compliance Report. That is a mouthful, but it does cover very well what you guys were trying to put out and what the research you did. It was great research. I had to look at the article or look at the research report. We're kind of going to intersperse that, if you're okay, and talk about that. But generally, what Greg and I have talked about in the past and what we've seen in some of our customers and kind of what I predicted back in 2020, right before the pandemic started, was that we really were starting to see a big emphasis on data protection programs as a whole, trying to fix the problems they had with data protection. A lot of people had pieces, parts, or they had bought a tool here or bought a tool there, but they didn't really have data classification programs, that kind of thing. So the first question to kind of kick off the conversation, Frank, I wanted to ask is, part of the reason those things hadn't kicked off is because they're really large and complicated to kick those off. How, from your perspective as a CISO and working at Kiteworks that deals with a lot of data, how would you kind of kick a program like that off? Where would you start? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Where I would start is looking at, the communications out in and out of your organization through all the various channels, and understanding where the most sensitive, whether it's by volume or quality of the data, meaning your IP, your software, your source code, or your financial or any kind of contracts, M&A type of activity, and understanding the quantity of it, and introducing protections and programs in place to keep those things in line, so you can monitor and lock them down. So, for instance, as an example within our organization, one of the first things we did a while ago is focused on the fact that most of the sensitive information that's going in and out of our organization is financial, accounts receivable, payable. So what did we do? We implemented a platform that requires the finance team to utilize our platform to make these things happen, send out information. That way our own partners, such as you guys, or our customers that we're dealing with directly, they know if the invoice didn't come through our Kiteworks platform, then check with us. It's not our invoice.
Yep.
You understand, you educate. So that the first place really is education of the user and your community to understand what the risks are and where these things lie.
I think that education is key. Knowing and telling people that business email compromise is an issue. And knowing that a lot of people like to send emails, they like to send texts. We've got a few of those ourselves of, hey, go buy some gift cards and send them to me, please. I'm in a very important meeting type of texts.
Yeah, but so low effort.
So low effort, but they obviously work with somebody. So that education is huge. I think that's a really big part of it. And letting them know, hey, we have, even if general knowledge, they don't know that that's a thing, but you tell them, we have implemented this system. This is the only way we're going to communicate with you. Kind of like banks and everybody do now, where we will never ask you for your password type of thing. You got any take on that?
I think the education is I would say half of the equation. The other half is force.
Carrot and stick.
There has to be both.
Yeah.
We've done some of these projects where we try and roll programs, and there's always at least one, usually many, where this thing is done a certain way because that's how they do it, and they can't change. We can't adapt into that system. There has to be some compromise in the process of, if you're handling sensitive information, you have to make the compromise for, this is how we're going to secure it. It has to be secured somehow. These are the constructs. What can we do? Sometimes that's tooling. Sometimes it's throwing out processes or building new ones. But I don't think we can educate our way out of this. Sooner or later, we have to force the process of, people don't get this choice. We're going to do it.
That requires executive buy-in.
Yes.
That requires a lot of will at the top. Frank?
Exactly. That, further on to, where how do you get started is at the top.
Yep.
If you don't have, the executive team's buy-in, management's buy-in on the importance and the need to implement these changes or implement a protection program, then it's doomed to failure. So to start, you need that buy-in. The education, that's where it starts, though. You're educating the executive team in some cases so they understand the problems there. Fortunately for me, my executives are well educated before I brought these problems to them, and I have the backing of the entire rest of the executive team to implement these changes and implement the program and further on.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Frank, it doesn't hurt that you're at a company who offers these services for other people.
Yes.
But the fact that you go and tell your customers, we eat our own dog food, right? To use that.
That's the advantage, both the security, the true security aspect of it, and the importance and our need for our own product, but also showing our customers that yes, and our prospects that yes, this is exactly what it's meant for, and it's doing its job.
Yep. So, large program here, where do you start? We've kind of established that. There's obviously a lot of pieces and parts that go to that. But what we talk to our customers about a lot of times, and I think you probably do as well, is once we've got this buy-in, you don't only need executive support, you need parallel, everybody here and down support as well, because if the employees don't buy in on it, they may be forced to do it, but unless there's actual tooling that keeps them going that way, it's going to be hard to do it. So a lot of times what we tell our customers is, like, if you're going to establish that trust with your user base to get this done, we're going to do some stuff to give you a kind of a quick win so they can see that this maybe not terribly difficult, not too hard to implement. It's not going to make your life completely miserable. So do you have some of those quick wins, examples of that, Frank, that you can put some stuff in place before to kind of convince the user base?
Yeah, I mean, one of the quick ways of winning the end user is with a platform that you can quickly bring. What you need is the controls and platform in place that actually doesn't greatly alter the way they're doing things today, as much as you possibly can. So, for instance, using the finance team as the example, we made some large changes to our Outlook plugin because they used emails, secure emails, to send messages and the information to our vendors and our customers. And so what we've done is we expanded the functionality of the Outlook plugin that ties into the secure messaging for uploading the content and the message itself for the content, and made it very user-friendly for the finance team so that they don't have to disrupt their day. Mm-hmm. It makes it easier to implement these things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It actually kind of, one of the pieces in the report that I tied in on, and Greg and I were talking about this earlier, is the email encryption and how difficult, if you're doing different email encryption systems and trying to encrypt, you got one system and somebody else has got a different system and they don't have compatibility and there's all the problems. I mean, I've dealt with that in past years when I was in security management, and it was extremely hard to put together. And that was, early 2000s. So it should be easier now, but it doesn't seem like we've made a ton of progress with some of those. So a platform sounds like a great way of going about it to make it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And, earlier this year, we announced the acquisition of Temo for their email protection gateway and all of their technology. And we're integrating that with the Kiteworks platform. Now, so we already had secure messaging within the platform, but we're further enhancing it with the security and the protection from signed digital signatures and encrypting of the message body through the technology that Temo provides.
Awesome.
I think one of the challenges with the email encryption, I don't know of a more successful spam and phishing email than the one that mimics the header you get on an encrypted message of click here, and documents and things like that. It's always hard to know when things are being passed, how to validate that you are getting an encrypted message. The same rules have applied for a while. Were you expecting encryption? Is it from someone that you know? And all of those kind of fundamentals. But it's still, the report talks about it a lot, of when encryption fails, people will just fall back to not encrypting at all. They don't try to, they just need to get their job done. And that is so much a part of education. The force only works so far, because if you make the process too difficult, users, developers, anybody who can touch a computer and wants to, they will just get their job done. People are remarkably efficient at solving problems and getting around things that are in their way.
Exactly.
So the platforms that make those things easy, that provide the tools to do their jobs better in some cases, of here's how you encrypted a message before. It's ugly. You have to exchange keys. It's not fun. Okay, put this into a tool, and now we're just going to send this message to Mary Jane at Acme, and off it works. Everybody gets to actually get through that task faster and safer. That's a win.
Absolutely a win.
Absolutely, yes. Simplification and make it easier, because I've seen it during deployments and onboarding customers that they will, if there's a will, there's a way, and they'll find it.
Yeah, they've got to answer to a boss, right? They've got to get stuff done. Let's get her going. So, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, Frank. So let's talk about something that's a little near and dear to, I think, both of us, which is apps and APIs specifically. So there's a whole lot of data moved back and forth between business to consumer and business to business with APIs. And there's just a whole lot of data that goes back and forth. And there's all kinds of stuff that goes into securing APIs. But from data sharing over APIs, what are your thoughts on keeping that locked down? Is that part of that same platform? How do you see that?
Yeah, it's got to be part of that same platform. A single platform is best when it can integrate with other platforms that do something perhaps better. It's in individual places. So having the APIs, having the protection on the platform for protection against malicious attempts and attacks through the interface is mandatory, really, to make a successful transfer. So you need to have a program in place that can lock down the amount of data that's going through a channel and provide the functionality of a platform that not only has the ability to receive functionality and calls through the APIs, but can integrate with other platforms utilizing APIs to properly and securely transfer that data and be able to normalize and see the information as it flows, where it's going and where it's coming from.
So for the first part of that, I think you kind of hit on the old rate limiting thing. You don't want to have a massive amount going through here. Some of that can be implemented in the API itself. Some of that can be implemented through API gateways. You're saying, through any other platform for data transfer, you could limit that, maybe anomalous type of behavior. If you see a massive amount coming through here, you're going to hit a limit. You don't want to keep that going, that kind of thing. Is that how you're kind of looking at it?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You have, through the APIs, web application firewalls for protection, for limiting things, monitoring for malicious activities, having a platform that also has that same type of functionality built into rate limit, understand the activity that's coming from various other endpoints into it, and blocking it where necessary, or opening it when also necessary. If you have large data sets, you should be able to configure the system to accept that information.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. All those fundamentals stack together, rate limiting and all of those kind of baseline protections that we put around everything. They work best when they're all put together. But stopping requests and forcing, or at least understanding, this B2B API call is going to happen X period. It's going to transfer this amount of data.
Yeah.
These are the anomalies. And putting the boundary in means that if something goes wrong, there's a very finite amount of data that's going to pass through there if either end is compromised. And that will stop a lot. An API endpoint that allows someone to look something up can always be abused and will always be abused until you say you can only execute this once every 5 seconds. And now it's going to take me 10 years to complete my data scrub. I'm not going to bother.
I'm moving to something else. Yeah.
So those small and simple fundamentals and guardrails do a lot for protection.
Yeah. Just the API, the modern APIs, and anybody who's listened to anything I've said in the last 2 years is probably sick of me talking about it, but it's just such a easy way of getting in somewhere if you don't lock it down, because it's just, nobody knows, the modern person doesn't know that API is even being used. They don't know everything that can go into that. And then a developer who, again, we just talked about, somebody who's just trying to get their job done, and they're not following necessarily the best practices to lock this stuff down. Should they be the one responsible for that? Or should it be, somebody in the architecture who is using an external, it's like an API gateway or something like that, to limit those things? That, obviously we could talk about that for about 16 podcasts, if not more, but it's fundamental to you're saying that who's responsible for it? How do you lock this down? Making it as part of a platform where, you're democratizing it at the same time, making it easy to do.
I think it's everybody's. Everyone plays a responsible role in this, whether it's developer, the QA, the security team that reviews these things, the infrastructure team that implements. Everyone plays a role and has a responsibility, because everything in the end comes down to the depth, the layers that are protecting. You get through one, you have something else that helps. You have the rails, as you mentioned.
Yep,
absolutely. Everybody does security.
Everybody rows. That's what our CEO always says, right? Everybody rows. So,
yep.
Well, Frank, really appreciate you being here. Really, everybody, we've got we'll throw a link. I think Lauren's going to throw a link out when we put this out to the Kiteworks report. Definitely worth spending your time running through that. It's got some great data in it. It's very specific to getting data back and forth, as that's Kiteworks world. But I mean, as we all know, that's the keys of the kingdom. It's all about data. So making sure you transfer that, and then reading up on just how the people in the industry who are responsible for this, how they see it, the problems they're running into. I think hopefully this report, a lot of people can see it and kind of move the needle on getting people to adopt some of these platforms and really start figuring out how to make that data transfer easier, more efficient, and that way we can adopt some more security in the process. So, Frank, any parting words?
No, just thanks for having me, and I definitely recommend looking at the report. As you mentioned, content is king. That's everything is content. That is the most powerful thing that for every company. So all of their content is basically the business, and
Yep.
you need to protect it.
Absolutely. Frank, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Greg, any parting thoughts? Any wisdom?
Come see us at Black Hat or DEF CON. Please
do. Please come see us. We'd love to have you. The DEF CON's a little more fun than the Black Hat, I think. But
depends on what you're there for.
Yeah. If you're at DEF CON, we're going to have a bunch of geeks in there having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So please come see us. All right. Thanks again, Greg. Thanks, everybody, for coming back and joining us. We will be more regular on these now that everybody's kind of on vacation or off vacation, maybe. And Greg's actually got some help in his day job because he's been doing a lot. He's about 120% utilized these days. And that's probably not too far from the truth if I'm looking at it.
That's right.
So once again, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Episode 45. We will see you next time on episode 46. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.